My girlfriend said, "You spend too much time with your niece. She's not your daughter." My niece was 7 and her parent had just died in an accident. I was her legal guardian. I said quietly, "You're right. She isn't my daughter. She's my responsibility." Then I filed for full custody and removed my girlfriend from my emergency contacts simultaneously when social services called her for a reference check. I'm a 31-year-old guy, project manager at a logistics firm. I drive a used truck, own a small house in Ohio, and until 14 months ago, the most stressful thing in my life was a quarterly budget review. Then my brother and his wife drove home from a date night on a rainy Tuesday in October, and a drunk driver blew a red light at 60 miles per hour. They were gone before the ambulance got there. My niece was 7. She had a backpack shaped like a ladybug, a missing front tooth, and suddenly no one left in the world except me. My parents had passed years before. My brother had no other siblings. His wife's family was overseas and made it clear within the first week that they weren't relocating and weren't taking a child. My brother had listed me as guardian in his will. So I drove to the hospital, signed what needed signing, and brought her home. No dramatic decision. No big speech. I just did it. What I didn't see coming was my girlfriend. We'd been together 2 years. She was smart, funny, seemed grounded. She had a key to my house. She was in my phone as an emergency contact. When the accident happened, she showed up, helped me get a proper bed frame for my niece's room, came over with food a couple times, said all the right things. I thought she was solid. She wasn't. Around week 5, the comments started. Small things at first. You seem distracted. I feel like I'm not a priority anymore. I let it go because I was running on 3 hours of sleep and trying to figure out how to help a traumatized second grader get through a school day without breaking down. I told myself she was adjusting, that this was a huge change and she needed time. By month 2, it was less subtle. This wasn't what I signed up for. I feel like a third wheel in your own house. That one stung because my niece was a child who had just lost her parents, not some inconvenient house guest. I kept absorbing it. I was too exhausted to have that fight. The night it actually broke open, my niece had a nightmare. A bad one. She woke up screaming for her mom, which happened a lot in those early months, and I went in and sat on the floor next to her bed and held her hand until she calmed down and fell back asleep. That took about 40 minutes. When I came back out to the living room, my girlfriend was standing by the kitchen counter with her arms crossed. "You were in there almost an hour," she said. "She had a nightmare. Her parents are dead." I know that. I'm just saying this is every night, and I'm just sitting out here. I kept my voice low because my niece's room was 20 feet away. "What do you want me to do?" "I want to feel like you remember you have a girlfriend. I want to be a priority sometimes." She is 7 years old. She lost her mom and dad 2 months ago. She is a priority right now. And that's when she said it. No hesitation, no softening, just flat and direct. "You spend too much time with her. She's not your daughter." The room went quiet. I looked at her, and I ran through every possible response in my head. The angry version, the one where I tried to explain grief to someone who clearly didn't want to understand it. The one where I asked her what exactly she expected me to do, let a 7-year-old cry alone in the dark. I didn't use any of them. "You're right," I said quietly. "She isn't my daughter. She's my responsibility." I walked to the bedroom. About 10 minutes later, I heard the front door close. I didn't chase after her. Now here's where I want to be clear about the timeline because people always ask. I didn't file paperwork that night out of some emotional reaction. What actually happened is I lay awake that night thinking about how the guardianship had been established through probate court after my brother's will was submitted. But my attorney had mentioned early on that formalizing full legal and physical custody would give me cleaner authority for things like medical decisions and school enrollment. I'd been putting it off because I was overwhelmed. That conversation with my girlfriend was a wake-up call, not because she hurt my feelings, but because I realized I was still leaving things halfway done. 3 days later, I called my family law attorney and told him I wanted to move forward with a custody petition. Ohio law allows a legal guardian to petition for custody, and since I was already named guardian in my brother's will and that had been recognized by the probate court, my attorney said the process would likely be straightforward as long as the home environment checked out. We'd still need to go through the standard process, filing in juvenile court, a home study, caseworker visits, the whole thing. He estimated it would take 3 to 5 months from filing to a final order. While I was reorganizing my paperwork and updating my contact information for the legal filings, I picked up my phone and went to my emergency contacts. I deleted her name. I replaced it with my attorney's office number. I didn't make a big deal of it. I didn't text her about it. I just did it and moved on. She found out in the worst possible way for her. As part of the custody process, the caseworker assigned to my case needed to conduct a standard reference check and welfare evaluation. I submitted my list of references, my neighbor who had seen me with my niece consistently since the accident, my niece's pediatrician, and a co-worker who had known me for years. I did not include my girlfriend. Why would I? We weren't together. She didn't have positive things to say, and the whole point of a reference list is to give people who can speak well to your character and situation. What I didn't know is that when my niece went to the ER the night I brought her in for an evaluation after the accident, standard procedure, they wanted to check her for any physical trauma and document her condition. My girlfriend had been listed on the intake form as my emergency contact, because at that point, she still was. The caseworker, being thorough, cross-referenced old documentation and reached out to her. My girlfriend picked up that call and apparently saw an opportunity. She told the caseworker I was emotionally unstable, that I had no experience with children, that she had serious concerns about the home environment. She presented herself as a worried former partner just trying to look out for the child. She was trying to blow up my custody case from the outside. My attorney called me the next morning. We need to talk about a reference call that came in. He walked me through what she'd said. I sat in my truck in the parking garage at work and just stared at the steering wheel for a while. Does it hurt the case? I asked. It's a flag. They'll want to do a more thorough home visit now. But your documentation is solid. Income, home, pediatrician statements, your employer's letter. One person making vague claims without any specifics isn't going to sink this. We just need to be careful. What do I do? Nothing. Let me handle it. Stop taking her calls. I did both, except she was just getting started. She showed up at my house twice in the following 2 weeks. First time I just didn't answer the door. I watched from the window and waited until she left. Second time she came back, I happened to have my neighbor over and I told my girlfriend through the closed door, calmly, that if she came back without being invited I would call the police. She left, but not quietly. She said some things on the porch that my neighbor heard clearly and later offered to put in writing if needed. Then came the texts. Long ones. Multiple a day. They cycled between apologizing, explaining herself, and then threatening to make sure people knew the truth about what was going on in their house. When I didn't respond to any of them, she escalated. She emailed my employer. She had my work email address from back when we were together. I used to send her calendar invites of things. She'd reply to my work address sometimes. She sent an email to my company's general HR inbox saying she was a concerned former partner with worries about my mental and emotional fitness to care for a child. No specifics. No evidence. Just vague, alarming language clearly designed to make someone at my job raise an eyebrow. My HR manager forwarded it to me with a note that said, and I'm paraphrasing, "We don't take action on personal correspondence, but thought you should be aware." I forwarded that email chain to my attorney within the hour. He called me back laughing, which is not something attorneys do often. She just handed us a documented, time-stamped instance of bad faith interference in a custody proceeding. Please thank her for me. Here is what I want people to understand about someone who operates like this. She had watched me for months running on empty, juggling grief and legal paperwork, and a second grader who needed stability. She had calculated, consciously or not, that I was too overwhelmed to push back, that I'd be so focused on just keeping my head above water that I wouldn't have the bandwidth to deal with her games. She was wrong. My attorney filed a formal written response to the caseworker's office documenting everything. The fact that she had not been listed as a reference and had been contacted through old emergency intake paperwork. The conflict of interest. She was a former partner I had ended contact with. The pattern of behavior after that call. The house visits. The texts. The employer email. We submitted screenshots, timestamps, my neighbor's written account, the forwarded HR email. Everything. We requested formally that her statement be flagged, that the conflict of interest be noted in the record, and that her claims be weighed accordingly given the documented context. Then we waited for the home visit. The caseworker who came to the house was professional and thorough. She walked through every room. She looked at my niece's bedroom, the ladybug backpack on the hook by the door, the bookshelf I'd built one weekend from a flat-pack kit, the moon-shaped nightlight my niece had picked out herself at the store because she said it made the dark feel friendly. She checked the kitchen, the bathroom, asked me about our daily routine, school pickup, doctor visits, how my niece was doing in therapy. Yes, I had enrolled her in grief counseling with a licensed child therapist within the first 6 weeks. That had been my attorney's suggestion, and honestly one of the best decisions I made. Then the caseworker sat down with my niece, just the two of them for a few minutes while I waited in the kitchen. When she came back out, she asked me one more question, and then thanked me for my time. Before she left, she glanced around the living room. There was a drawing my niece had made taped to the wall, some art project from school, bright crayon colors, and she just nodded slightly. I found out later what my niece said when the caseworker asked what she liked about living with me. She said, "He makes pancakes on Saturdays and he never misses pickup." That was it. That was the whole review for me personally. The home study came back clean. No concern flagged. The caseworker's written report described the home environment as stable and appropriate and noted that my niece appeared comfortable, bonded, and well-adjusted given her circumstances. My girlfriend's statement was noted in the file. It was reviewed. It was weighed against everything else. It didn't move the needle. 4 months after I filed a petition, right in the middle of that 3 to 5 month window my attorney had predicted, the juvenile court granted me full legal and physical custody of my niece. The judge's order described the home environment as, and I wrote this down because I wanted to remember it, stable, nurturing, and clearly child-centered. I sat in the parking lot outside the courthouse and read that phrase 3 times. But I wasn't done yet. I want to be precise about what I did next because I need you to understand it wasn't about revenge for its own sake. What she did, making a deliberately false and misleading statement to a social services caseworker with the intent to interfere with a child custody proceeding, has real legal and professional consequences in Ohio. I didn't create those consequences. I just made sure the right people knew what happened. First, my attorney sent a formal cease and desist letter to her directly. It documented the full timeline in order, the unsolicited caseworker statement, the 2 unannounced house visits, the text messages, the email to my employer. It made clear that any further contact with me, my employer, any government agency involved in my case, or any school or medical provider connected to my niece would result in a civil harassment claim. She did not contact me again after that letter arrived. Second, we filed a formal complaint with the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services documenting that she had made a bad faith, unsolicited, factually unsubstantiated statement to a caseworker in a custody proceeding with documented evidence of a personal conflict of interest and a subsequent pattern of harassment. That complaint went into a formal review process. I don't control what they do with it, but it's on record. Third, and this is the one that I think landed hardest, she worked in a healthcare-adjacent field that has its own professional licensing board in Ohio. I'm keeping the specifics vague intentionally, but licensed professionals in that field have a code of conduct, and submitting a misleading bad faith report to a government agency in a child welfare matter, combined with a documented harassment pattern, falls squarely within the kind of conduct those boards take seriously. My attorney helped me put together a factual summary, no editorializing, just a documented timeline with supporting evidence, and we submitted it to the relevant licensing board. The HR email she sent to my employer, which she almost certainly thought would quietly create problems for me, became one of the cleanest pieces of evidence in that submission. It was written in her own words, from her own email address, time-stamped, and preserved. My attorney described it as the most self-defeating thing she could have done. I don't know exactly what the licensing board decided. I heard through someone tangentially connected that she was placed on a professional conduct review. I didn't dig further. I didn't need to. She made her choices, and the institutions that govern her profession made theirs. That was enough. My niece is doing well now. She still has hard nights sometimes. The grief doesn't disappear. It just changes shape. But she started 2nd grade strong. She has 2 close friends, and she recently informed me with complete seriousness that we need a hamster and that the answer has to be yes. I told her we'd talk about it. She said that means yes. She's not wrong. I'm not going to pretend I have all of this figured out. I'm a 31-year-old single guy who became the primary parent of a grieving 7-year-old overnight. I make mistakes. I forget things. I burned an entire batch of pancakes last month, and we had cereal instead, and she thought that was the funniest thing that had ever happened. But I show up. Every day, I show up, and I'll take he never misses pickup as the best thing anyone has ever said about me. She isn't my daughter. She's my responsibility. And honestly, most days, those two things feel like the same thing.